Hello students. Today we are going to start with the very first chapter of Introduction of Statistics for Economics. Now in this particular chapter we are going to study what is exactly economics. Economics has its origin from two Greek words, oikos, which means household, and nemein, which means management. And it is believed that in those days it used to be called as oikonomia. So basically, economics was called household management. But as we progressed, we started giving it various definitions. Now, some basic concepts regarding this particular chapter are: what are exactly goods? Why do we buy them? We buy goods for satisfaction of our wants. And there are two types of goods. One is economic goods. They command market price as their demand is greater than supply. For example, milk, books, pen, any kind of stationery, the clothes that you buy, these are all classified as economic goods. On the other hand, we have non-economic goods, which are also called as free goods, as they are plentiful in supply. They do not command any market price. For example, air, sunshine, rain, etc. Now, economics is study of economic problems. And what are these economic problems? We are aware that we have scarce or limited resources. For example, say we have a certain income, monthly income, we have a fixed amount of pocket money, but we have unlimited wants with the given amount of money. Say with a pocket money of 1,000 rupees, you want to buy some clothes, you want to buy some stationery, and sometimes something more also. So the given resources have got alternative uses, and you as a consumer have to make a choice between these alternative uses. So say if at a particular point of time I decide to buy some clothes instead of some stationery items, then there will be an opportunity lost in terms of the thing which I do not want to buy at present. So opportunity cost is same as the opportunity lost. If at a time I do not want to buy stationery, then that thing is what you call as opportunity lost. So if we move on, we need to be aware of few more terms. Who is a customer or a consumer? He or she is a person who buys goods for the direct satisfaction of wants. The producer is a person who adds or creates utility or value. He is the one who manufactures goods. Then we have service holder, who is in a job to earn wages or salaries, who is employed by somebody. Then we have the service provider, those who provide services to the society, the doctors, the nurses, the teachers, etc. And in turn, they earn money. So, what is finally the conclusion that we draw? Economics is a study of how human beings make choices to allocate scarce resources to satisfy their unlimited wants in such a manner that customers can maximize their satisfaction, producers can maximize their profits, and society can maximize its social welfare. So just keep in mind those words which I have underlined. As we move on, we study about the activities. As you are aware that in economics we are concerned more about economic activities, but overall the activities are divided into economic and non-economic activities. Non-economic activities can be anything as social activity. When we go for any social gathering, your mothers go for kitty parties, or we have a birthday party. These are social activities. We go to religious places, we go to places of worship. Those are religious activities. We get involved in some campaigning, or we go to vote. Those are political activities. We get involved in some welfare work. We work with some NGO, that is charitable activity. And your parents, they provide you with good education, health facilities, training, skills. Above all, they shower you with their love and affection. That is what you call as parental activity. On the other hand, what we are mainly concerned is with the economic activities, that is the activities which help us to earn living. These are related to the use of scarce resources in such a manner that the satisfaction that we get gets maximized. These activities can be further of various types. These are all interrelated to each other. Remember one thing, production leads to income, income leads to consumption, a part of income gets saved, that saving goes into investment, and so on. So we cannot broadly compartmentalize them, they are all interrelated. What is production? As I have mentioned above, it is creation or addition of value. Consumption is the direct satisfaction of wants when we make use of some goods or services. Investment is production of capital goods. Now you have studied about capital goods in your 9th and 10th standards. Capital goods are those like machines, buildings, warehouses, which can be used over a number of years, not just in a particular season. So these require a lot of investment, and they lead to indirect satisfaction of want. Why am I calling it indirect satisfaction? Because they lead to further production of goods, and those goods can be used for satisfaction of wants. The next one is exchange. Here we are concerned with sale and purchase. So it leads to product pricing. Depending upon the demand and supply of the goods, it forms the basis for the pricing of a given product or good. Then we move on to distribution. Distribution is nothing but the payment of wages, salaries, etc. to the different factors of production. You have read about factors of production in 9th and 10th. So land gets paid rent, labor gets paid wages, entrepreneur gets paid the profit, and capital gets paid interest. So it helps us to know how much is our gross domestic product. Now let us move on to scope of economics. When we talk about scope of economics, we deal with its definition, we deal with its nature, whether it is a science or an art. We also deal with the subject matter, that is the branches of economics. Now, definitions as far as economics is concerned, the first one is wealth definition, which was given by Adam Smith, who is also called the father of modern economics. In his book, An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, he said that economics is an enquiry into the factors that determine the wealth of a country and its growth. What criticism did this particular definition face? It gives just a narrow meaning of wealth. Why? Because it talks about material goods. It doesn't include the services. Then more importance has been given to wealth, and welfare has been ignored, moral values have been ignored, and there is wrong presumption of an economic man. An economic man can be rarely found in real life. So this particular definition was discarded, and we moved on to the second type, that is material welfare definition, which was given by Alfred Marshall in his book Principles of Economics. What are its features? It studied economics as a social science, that is, man as a normal being, a real being, not just an economic man. And here, wealth is the means and welfare achieved is the end. But this particular definition, though it was better than the wealth definition, was also criticized by Robbins. What were the points of criticism? First is, it gives a wrong concept of material goods. That is, services are also supposed to be included, not just goods, not just the things which are tangible, which we can touch, we can see. We should also be including the services of doctors, nurses, etc. Then welfare cannot be defined exactly. There is no scale to particularly measure welfare, and some activities which are good from the point of view of earning income may not be good from welfare point of view. Let us just talk about war. All the resources get diverted to war, but that is not good for the economy as a whole. It doesn't lead to the welfare of the people. Similarly, any kind of illegal activity, say it be anything related to drugs or wine or any such thing, though it helps the person to earn money in that particular field, but it is not good for the welfare of the society. So it becomes difficult to define exactly economics in terms of only material welfare. Hence, we can say that even the activities, the human activities that we talked about, cannot be compartmentalized. We cannot totally separate economic activities from the non-economic activities that we talked about earlier. Then this particular welfare definition, it is classificatory. It gives the categories, but it doesn't make the distinction very clear. So we moved on to the third type, that is the scarcity definition, which is given by Lord Robbins in his book An Essay on the Nature and Significance of Economic Science. He said that economics is a science that studies the nature of relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So here he reached a little bit closer to the definition, that is, he called economics as a science of choice. But this particular definition was also criticized. It doesn't give a proper difference between means and ends, and sometimes there is a problem of evidence. Whenever there is overproduction, that can also lead to economic problems. So the problem doesn't always arise from demand side. It's always not so that there is a scarcity of the good. The problem can also arise if there is abundance of any particular good. Then it reduce this economic theory to just a valuation theory. It doesn't take into account the problems which are faced at the macro level, at the level of the economy or the country as a whole, and it doesn't talk about growth, and it is neutral towards end. Economics should be a fruitful science. It should give us solutions. So it should not become neutral towards the ends. Then we move on to growth definition, which was given by Samuelson. This particular definition was comprehensive as it contained all the good aspects of all the above definitions. So it got accepted universally. It says that we need to talk about efficient allocation of resources to increase economic growth and promote social welfare. So these are the definitions of economics. Now we move on to nature of economics. When we talk about nature, we talk about economics as a science or an art. As a science, we will consider economics as a social science and not a natural science, not like physics, chemistry. So why is it called a science? Because there is definitely systematized study, as you will study in statistics and all. There is a system. Then we have scientific laws. Why are we calling them scientific laws? Because we can prove it with the examples that we find practically in our lives, like the law of demand, the law of supply. Then there is a cause and effect relationship. Cause and effect means, say for example, as per the law of demand, in case of normal goods, when the prices increases, the demand falls. So the cause is increase in the price and the effect is the fall in demand. So there is a cause and effect relationship. And as I mentioned above, the laws can be verified. We can do empirical investigation of the laws. We can see that in practical life they become applicable. Further, as a science, economics is both a positive science, that is, it deals with the facts, what is, what was, and for example, say India is a 2.8 trillion economy. Say India is overpopulated. These are all positive statements. It is also a normative science. Normative science means we talk about what is desired, what ought to be, what should be. That is, say for example, India should be spending more on health sector. As well as we talk here about economics as an art. As an art, it puts to practice whatever are the principles. So there is practical application of scientific principles. This we can see whenever formulation of policies are done, whether it was being done earlier by planning commission or at present by Niti Aayog. Last but not the least, in this particular chapter, we talk about subject matter of economics, that is its branches. Though you will study more of them in your higher classes, but in 11th standard we talk about microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics studies the individual units. For example, we talk about the price of a particular pen, we talk about price of any garment, the ready-made garment, we talk about price of bread, we talk about salary of an individual person. So these are all things related to microeconomics. On the other hand, we talk about aggregates, averages when we study macroeconomics. For example, we talk about national income, we talk about GDP. I hope this makes the chapter very clear to you, and this is what is a concise description of whatever has been explained in the chapter. Thank you so much.